Let us come to God in prayer. On this day, O God, we give thanks for all that we have. We also give thanks for the opportunity to give all that we have, and also to share our voice with those who make choices and decisions above us. And so we ask that you take the hot coals off of your altar and touch these lips of clay, so that the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts might be acceptable in your sight, O God, our rock and our most holy Redeemer. Amen. Well, it was several years ago. It was pre-pandemic, maybe 2018, 2020 or 19, something in there, when Susan and I went to an interfaith gathering at the Pacifica Institute in Albany. It's an ecumenical gathering of primarily Sunni Muslims and Jews. However, that night, Susan and I were there. There was chit-chat, the normal little socialization and chit-chat that goes on. There was a meal and then a program, good meal, and then a program and then a speaker. I couldn't tell you, I still can't tell you, can't tell you who the speaker is. But what I remember is that the speaker was talking about the word, and I thought the word pan. And that's why I have pan as the sermon title. But I think I'm way off on this. The word pan and how it meant bread in the world and in some of the Middle Eastern languages. So early in the week I named my sermon Pan, P-A-N, meaning bread. But as the week progressed, I began to research and Google the word pan. Well, the only thing I could come up with is that the Arabic word for bread is challah. And the Hebrew word is lechem, as in Bethlehem, but we would say that in Hebrew, Bethlehem is Beit Lechem, as in that, meaning bread, the bread, house of bread. Pan is a Spanish word. Then the Spanish introduced bread to the Japanese, and this word pan for bread is the first word that historically they can document that was acculturated by another culture. So the word bread in Spanish is pan, and the Japanese learned how to make bread. They didn't have bread then at that point, whenever that was. The word in French is pain, which is spelled like pain, P-A-I-N, but it's pronounced pan. But anyway, whether or not the word that I actually want is pan or not, and I'm probably quite wrong about that, is I'm going back with my basic premise that when the ancients said the word bread, they also meant a good, healthy diet for a good, healthy life and all the basic things that we need in life for all the people throughout all the world. And even now, when we say bread, we might even mean money, as in, dude, give me some bread. I got to put some bread on the table. When we say bread, yes, we might mean bread. We might mean bread, but we also might mean meat and fish and veggies and even health care. How is it that we take care of our bodies? We put nutrition in, but should we get sick, well, we need to take care of this body that God has given to us. And so we need bread to pay for the heating, to pay for the cooking, for the stove and the gas for that, and the electricity. Bread is the basic building block for the basic things that we need in life to do more than just survive. We're not talking about survival, that we as individuals and a culture and a society, what we're not talking about is the ability to thrive, not simply survive. And so just as Jesus taught us to pray that we might receive our daily bread, he wasn't just talking about our daily bread, he was talking about much more than a daily slice of Wonder Bread. Jesus wants us to have a healthy diet. And not just bread, but fish too. To be filled with the goodness of God. And maybe some asparagus and some rice to go with that. In 1954, Abraham Maslow finally perfected his theory about human development as he had begun earlier in his career. And it's become known as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's actually a pyramid of needs called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. At the bottom, there are 5 different levels for Maslow. At the bottom, there is psychological needs. Right above that is safety needs. They sort of go together as basic needs. And then there's loving and belonging, and above that is esteem from others and your own self-respect. And then at the top of the pyramid, which very few people get to, is what they call self-fulfillment or self-actualization. It's about having a certain morality, a creativity, spontaneity, acceptance, and so on. It's about you becoming your whole being that you can be. But at the very bottom, going back to the bottom of this pyramid, the very foundation are physiological needs. And the way this pyramid works, it's not that we need to finish the bottom to get to the next safety level. There's certain fluidity in this, but if we don't have our basic physiological needs met, we're never going to get up to love, esteem, and self-actualization. And sometimes we can drop down if you have had a really bad day. Physiological needs would be air. We need air to breathe. We need water. We need food, our daily bread. We need shelter. We need to sleep. We need clothing. And we need the ability and the desire for reproduction. And then just above that is personal security, employment, which helps us put bread on the table and helps us with our basic physiological needs so that if we have a job and we get paid, we can put bread on our table. Also some resources. Health, again, health is there. And property. I don't know why property is there. But anyway, that's the physical needs. And I think that's why what we're doing today is we're talking about this very basic down here and making sure that Congress understands that we need our basic needs to be met. Because after we finish here and we send ourselves out into the world with our sending hymn, you are invited into the community room where we will be writing and signing and sending Bread for the World letters regarding the Farm Bill, which is big in the news and big in the lives of those who need that to happen. According to Bread for the World, they gather people at many tables to provide bread for the world. They sit together at tables of power and influence with lawmakers to enact policies to help ensure that everyone has access to nutritious food. They lobby. They lobby for policy change. And it's important to get involved and make your voice heard. Congress and the President, indeed, are making major decisions right now that could seriously benefit individuals and families living in poverty and at the risk of hunger. Bread for the World also lobbies for agricultural trade, agriculture and trade, global trade, because trade can be a powerful tool in the reduction of poverty in developing countries. But the United States agriculture and trade policy has sometimes undermined the efforts of lower income countries to take the first step out of poverty. Bread for the World has a lot of the same values that we do. It says we believe in that every human being is created in the image of God, every human being, and has inherent dignity that affords an opportunity to be in right relationship with God, self, neighbor, and our environment, and to freely access enough nutritional food for our good health. And that goes back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Our basic needs need to be met. And notice their values. It's with a relationship with God, however you understand God, a higher being, yourself, your neighbor, and your environment. So much is involved with, and Bread for the World is now working with about climate change, because climate change affects, of course, the way crops are grown and what is grown, and the expansion of the desert into the jungle in Africa, for example. What kind of foods are we getting? They seek to establish effective systems, structures, and policies that affirm equality and advance equity among all human beings, and protect people who experience hunger and poverty from oppression. So governmental oppression is an issue as well. We believe in working with churches, institutions, and individuals, including people experiencing hunger themselves, to achieve their mission. And they go on to say, and this is interesting, and something to keep in mind, and something that I've known for a while, is that federal nutrition programs provide 10 times as much food assistance as private churches and charities combined. And that's why ending hunger requires collective efforts of churches, synagogues, mosques, charities, food banks, and federal programs. It was getting late in the day that day. There were at least 5,000 people there, and they were getting hungry. And Jesus saw that the people were hungry, and so he fed them out of the scarcity of 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. And here in America, there are people saying that we don't want to feed the people, even out of our abundance. The other night, Susan told me that the penthouse at the Millennial Tower was for sale. Okay, oh good. The Millennial Tower, the penthouse at the Leaning Tower of San Francisco, is for sale. And I wondered, and so I asked, well, how much are they asking for it? And she said, $14 million. And I thought, And then she says, it only has 2 bedrooms. Well, we have 3, and so I think I'll pass on that. Just think what $14 million could do for the homeless issue and problem and hunger in San Francisco alone. It's just that the priorities of our culture are not aligned with the priorities of God. As long as the minimum wage is at $7.25, $14 around here, because nobody's going to hire you for any less than that, there will be poverty, depending on the standard of living in that area. If Congress isn't going to raise the minimum wage, then there will be people that need the SNAP card. If Congress isn't going to raise the amount of the SNAP card, then there will be people who are homeless, jobless, foodless, and hungry. Bread for the World says that there are many people struggling with poverty are unable to earn a living wage and don't have enough money left to buy food at the end of the month. And then this statistic, nearly 15% of United States household, that means if there's 100 people, households in your area, 15 are having problems. 15% of the United States households, nearly 40 million Americans, including 12 million children, struggle to put food on the table. And there's people who are in poverty, and even though they have enough to eat, there's something called hunger, hidden hunger. It's hidden hunger, meaning that they have enough to eat, but the quality of food that with its vitamins and nutritions just isn't there and is lacking. Like Jesus said, we cannot live on bread alone, nor can we live on mac and cheese alone. Although it's yummy and filling, it's not very healthy. And because without that bread, we as individuals, a culture, a global community, we won't be able to climb Maslow's pyramid of needs. And that brings me back to Jesus somehow. It wasn't just fish and bread that day. They actually got Jesus too. But it was the idea about the bread that got stuck in my head at an ecumenical event in Albany a few years ago that night. It was all that God has to offer. That when we say bread, it's more than just the bread. It is all that God has to offer. And if you read that again, you'll find out there was leftovers. Not just crumbs, but there was leftovers. And if Congress should deny a raise in the SNAP program, then Congress is saying no to God's desire for us, and God's abundance, and indeed are refusing God's abundance and generosity. So the story of Jesus and the fish and the bread and the leftovers says, we can do this. We can do this. And there are studies that says there is enough food in the world to feed the people in the world, and we can do this. And that's why we are signing letters to our Congress people today. Praise be to Jesus. Amen.